All right, remember that summer of love of 2020? Well, some Black Lives Matter, mostly peaceful rioters that set a Wendy's restaurant building on fire. They just got a $500 fine for burning down that Wendy's building. Meanwhile, we've got guys in Washington, D.C. that walked into the Capitol with police escort, getting up to 17 years of prison. $500, 17 years in the can. Let's talk about it. Here we go. This is one of those storylines that just irks me to no end because politicians basically allowed this rioting to happen during the summer of love. And after that, well after that. I mean, they just allowed it to happen. It was just green light. I don't know if you watched the most recent documentary on fall of Minneapolis. It was about the whole Derek Chauvin thing and George Floyd, Fentanyl Floyd. Man, what was purported to the public and what actually happened, two wildly different stories. I mean, the documentary makes you think, man, they completely manufactured this entire set of circumstances and just cherry picked whatever data worked for their narrative. And in the end, Derek Chauvin just got stabbed 22 times. I mean, somebody's going to take that poor guy out before he gets, his convictions overturned, because so much of the stuff was just wildly inconsistent with reality, in my opinion, from what I saw and what I know. And one of the storylines that I covered was going down to Portland to watch Antifa basically try and set a federal building on fire. And then at the time, President Trump said, hey, I'll send some National Guard in if you guys can't handle your own shit. I mean, if you guys can't handle this, then that's fine. We'll send the troops in. And everybody in Portland, no, don't do that. Yeah, that would be abusive. And then Antifa just rears up its ugly head. Those guys are just professional protesters. That's what they are, right? So I went down and covered that, and they literally were trying to set on fire the federal buildings. They allowed this stuff to happen. They allowed Wendy's to get burned up. But guys who walk onto the Capitol, they call an insurrection. I don't go down the election was stolen road. I go with hard facts, what I know I can prove. And some of that is there's somewhere between $2 and $5 billion worth of damage done by the mostly peaceful Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters. Somewhere between 2 and 5 billion, 2 billion insured, up to 5 billion total of damage done. And yet you've got these guys who, what they cause, $1.5 million damage to the Capitol, $1.5 million versus 2 to 5 billion. And the guys that at the Capitol get, years and years and years, for what? Yeah, that's where the disparity to me is. All right, if you're going to go after the guys in January 6th, then you got to go after all the Black Lives Matter supporters, and you got to go after Antifa as well, that caused this damage, that burned down fire station or police department in Minneapolis. That happened very, very similarly to how the Seattle Police Department was given up during the Summer of Love. So, a lot of this stuff looks like it was just straight up politically driven. And yet you've got these guys out burning up a Wendy's, and you're going to have to pay a fine. A fine for burning up a Wendy's? Are you kidding me? I mean, shenanigans. That's all I'm going to say. This is shenanigans. This is an exemplary shenanigan. Conservatives are outraged after 2 people charged with burning down a Wendy's restaurant in Atlanta in the summer of 2020 were fined just $500 each. Gee, do you think they had a lenient prosecutor? Do you think they had a lenient judge? What do you think there? Did they even need an attorney? Let's say you're affiliated with Black Lives Matter, therefore you get a hall pass. Prosecutors said Chisum N, Kingston, Natalia Hannah White, and John Wesley Wade set a fire that destroyed the Wendy's in June 2020 amid protests sparked by the fatal shooting of Rashard Brooks, 27-year-old black man, by a police officer during an encounter outside the restaurant. Kingston and White accepted plea deals on Thursday, just days before they were set to go on trial, WSB-TV reported. Both pleaded guilty to charges including arson in the first degree. Talk about a plea deal. Are you kidding me? You burn a restaurant down and you get a $500 fine? Yeah. They'll each have to pay a $500 fine, complete 150 hours of community service, and serve 5 years of probation. Now, boys and girls, don't light any more of Wendy's on fire. You're on probation. No on the burning up of restaurants. Wade remains in federal custody. What's he got going on? He's got. Are there additional challenges? Are there additional concerns with Wade, or has he committed shenanigans? Probably. Representative Margerie Taylor Greene. There we go. MTG, a Republican from Georgia, took to social media to rail against their sentences, comparing it to the punishments meted out to those charged with offenses related to the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol by supporters of former President Donald Trump. Were they there on Trump's orders? That whole thing just drives me crazy. Yeah, and then was the election stolen? I just don't go down those roads. But what I do know is that it's wildly unfair to have these guys walking into the Capitol, not lighting anything on fire, doing years and years and years in jail or prison, when these guys are literally burning things up. They're trying to burn the city to the ground, and they get a $500 fine and few community hours. January 6ers are being locked up for years for walking in the Capitol, and some never walked inside at all. But the guys who plead guilty to arson burned down the Wendy's in Atlanta in 2020. Black Lives Matter riots, mostly peaceful, mind you, mostly peaceful. Don't you believe what they're saying? I mean, that Wendy's just burning up, just destroyed. I mean, that was mostly peaceful. It was an incendiary fire. Yeah, right? They burned it up on purpose. They should go to jail. They only have to pay a $500 fine, Margerie Taylor Greene wrote on X, formerly Twitter. You know what's so funny is all that talk about everybody leaving Twitter. Yeah, it hasn't happened. Why not? Because they have nowhere else to go. There's no other social media like Twitter for you to be loud and proud and get your tweet out there, right? There's just not. There's no other format to do that. So people are like, yeah, I'm leaving because it's not a safe space anymore. Hey, looks like you're back. What happened between when you left and now? I realized nobody was listening to my ridiculous tweets. The scales of justice have tipped so hard one way that they have fallen off, Margerie Taylor Greene. I mean, it's wild, right? If we scroll down here, here is the Wendy's. We'll go back up. Don't worry. Here is that Wendy's. Now, in the name of racial justice, this Wendy's was burned down. Yes. And in the name of racial justice, Antifa tried to set the federal building in Portland, Oregon on fire. And I witnessed that firsthand. And then the nice men and women came out of the federal building and lobbed some tear gas our direction. And then we had to go crying to our mommies in the back where the fake ambulance is and get some milk poured in our eyes. I didn't do that. I just ran around with eyes that were just burning up because I had a little bit of tear gas. And these protesters are so weak. Just take a tear gassing like a man. So bad. Representative Mike Collins, a Republican of Georgia's 10th congressional district, wrote, I'm sure a lot of J6 trespassers would love to pay $500 and go home if only they had burned down a building, maybe. Yes. Right? This is a massive double standard. Massive double standard. So much of the crazy nonsense that happened during the Summer of Love was just hall pass. Oh yeah, we're going to give them a hall pass. I thought maybe some of our pro-Palestinian rallies were going to go this direction. I know we saw one in downtown Seattle get The mostly peaceful, and in this case, they have been peaceful. Their physical actions, their words are wildly violent and anti-Semitic. But I think before we're all said and done with this whole, this rage of, we need to have the ceasefire now. We can't have the loss of human life. Why are these people glommed onto this one topic? It's like, well, what about the people in China? What about the people here? What about the people there? What about the people there? And you guys are worried about these people? Well, they're oppressed. Right? That's really what it comes down to, right? The far left is so worried about oppression. And they don't care that it's almost 7,000 miles away and all their marching is doing the big goose egg. It's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. They're telling, President Biden, you need to support the ceasefire. Can't wait for this thing to die down a little bit. It's so ridiculous. But I think before we're all said and done, you will see some events like what we saw in the Summer Love, just more scaled down from the standpoint of one of those mostly peaceful protests, just taking a little turn at the Y in the road, and bashing out some windows. Guaranteed you'll see some more of that stuff, and I'll cover it for you right here. So the conservative libs of TikTok, I love that account. That's a great account. They claimed that there was a 2-tier justice system for those arrested during the unrest that erupted in the summer of 2020 following the death of George Floyd, Fentanyl Floyd, and other black people, and those charged in relation to the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Well, this storyline right here pretty much says it all. It's like people walked onto the grounds. Granted, there were a few incidents of, that shouldn't have happened. So put those people in jail for what they did that was so horrifically wrong. But the vast majority of those January 6ers, you saw the footage from Tucker Carlson. Yeah, even the dude with the big headpiece thing, who now is back out, right? He's already done his prison sentence and he got out. He was literally given an escort by police. So insurrection, well, I would probably disagree with that. And I really disagree with the incarceration versus what these folks are getting. This is just totally unfair. Totally unfair. $500 for burning down a Wendy's for Black Lives Matter and 17 years in prison for knocking over a fence on January 6th. The libs of TikTok have kind of spun it that way. It's really funny when you talk to somebody that doesn't follow the libs of TikTok and you tell them what it is, and they're like, I have to go check out that channel. Well, more than likely they're, maybe a liberal. And they are not going to enjoy the content there because it does not paint liberals in a favorable light. That's why it's so entertaining to watch. It's just plain entertaining because you got a bunch of liberal folks that they're far left oftentimes that their heads are just spinning off. They're can't handle it. The 17-year prison sentence mentioned in the post was handed to Joseph Biggs, a former leader of the far-right Proud Boys extremist group, and one of the longest sentences handed down in connection with the attack on the Capitol. Don't you feel like anybody on the right has just been wildly persecuted in this thing? We're years into this now, and we're still prosecuting people. Yeah. How about if we go after everybody in Black Lives Matter and Antifa and any of those other groups that were responsible for the $5 billion in damage done throughout the United States, oftentimes in the low end communities of color that can least afford it. How about that? Yeah. Horrible, right? Horrible. Biggs was convicted of charges including seditious conspiracy. How about just burning a building down? How about arson? What about arson? Arson should be a little bit more than a $500 fine and 150 hours of community service. He helped lead dozens of Proud Boys members in marching to the U.S. Capitol, where they joined the mob that broke through. See, this is Newsweek, so you're going to get that. That's mob. All right. Okay. All right. I'll read it because you wrote it. Mob that broke through police lines and disrupted the joint session of Congress that was certifying President Joe Biden's election victory. What's going to happen with our election in 2024? Seriously, people are saying, Uncle Joe isn't going to make it. And, and Donald Trump is going to be in prison. I mean, I do not believe that. I believe that Joe Biden, something has got to shift there, right? And they're talking about Gavin Newsom maybe running, but he keeps saying no, that he's doing a shadow campaign. He has been flitting about, hasn't he? He went to China because he was basically running interference for the president, who doesn't really know which day it is at any given point in time and can't seem to make out where he is physically because he's got cognitive decline, right? So, Gavin Newsom, is he going to run? No, it doesn't sound like it. How about Michael Obama? Michelle Obama. Sorry about that. I just mixed names up there. How about she runs? A little late in the game, right? We're already November. The election's about a year away. What do you got going there? Meanwhile, Trump is defending himself against indictment after indictment and he's got cases going just left and right. Yeah, what's going to happen? I mean, we just got through with a 4-person debate. The 4 people that are not going to win the election. Let's hear what they have to say anyway. Let's just hear what they have to say, right? I mean, maybe one of them does because Trump doesn't get a run. I don't know. It's going to be wild. I think Trump runs. I don't know. I like his odds, but I also know the system, the machine doesn't want that, doesn't want round 2. But you're also hearing the left side say, yeah, you know what? We're not really that comfortable with President Biden either, with Joe Biden, because the man is just whatever they're hopping him up on to get him to do his thing. I want some of that when I get into my 80s. Just give me the senior citizen speed. I want to be able to make this go, even if I'm not doing anything constructive at that point in time. Yeah, let's go get some ice cream. Let's go. Colin Rugg, the co-owner of the controversial conservative site Trending Politics, also criticized the sentence given Kingston and White. Even if you compare a $500 fine to a 2-year sentence or a 30-day sentence, give me the fine all day long. I'll figure out how to pay that. Put me on payment plan if I can't figure it out, right? I mean, 10 payments of $50 a month plus interest. For reference, this is the same Fulton County where Donald Trump was charged with 13 felony counts and facing a maximum of 76.5 years in prison, Rugg wrote on X. Is this all political? Absolutely. Absolutely. You bet it is. However, others noticed the differences in the offenses. I wasn't aware Wendy's was the seat of power of the United States government, one person wrote. No, but you burned a Wendy's down. So that's called arson. So whether or not it's a seat of power, yeah, it still deserves a harsher sentence than $500 and a little bit of community service, a little bit of picking up that garbage on the side of the highway, right? Another said, while both were acts of vandalism, the invasion of the U.S. Capitol building by those seeking to harm reps and senators and disrupt the peaceful transfer of power amounts to treason. Huge difference. 17 years versus a $500 fine difference? Yeah, really? I mean, you're going to go with that? I'd say one is way harsh and the other is way light. And that's what we're arguing. That is what we're arguing. Another person replied to Green, writing, "She is such a liar. The ones being locked up for years committed serious felonies." Burning down a Wendy's? Is that a misdemeanor? Is that what, I mean, it must be, because what we're saying is a $500, you pay that fine. We're all said and done here. You're good to go. I mean, that 150 hours of community service, we'll just tack that on to the other community service you're already doing for those other convictions. Oh, what? Hey now. Yeah. The ones who walked in are getting light sentences. They're still getting a couple of years. How this makes any sense, how you can justify this to me. I've had this conversation with so many people. It's like, yeah, the scales of justice are not equal. This is literally what you're looking at. More than 1,200 people across the U.S. have been charged with offenses related to the attack on the U.S. Now we just start to go into this. Some 428 were sentenced to serve time behind bars, while 134 people received time in home detention. 1,200 people. How many people from Black Lives Matter and Antifa have been prosecuted? I'm curious. For all of the multiple peaceful protesting in 2020 and 2021 that amounted to $5 billion in damages across the United States. How many of those folks have been prosecuted and have done jail time? Yeah, not a lot, right? Not a lot. And these guys are getting a $500 fine. Kind of tells you something, doesn't it? Officials did not file charges for almost all the low-level offenses, like disobeying curfews, because they knew that looked terrible. But they had enough people they could stick with the bad offenses, walking in with a police escort. With those offenses, they had enough of those folks so they could just stick to the wall, and here we are. According to the newspaper, some prosecutors and law enforcement observers said mass arrests were carried out as a crowd control tactic. You get this just ridiculous stuff that people bring up. The bottom line here is that the crime doesn't match the time, period. Time incarcerated. And there's not even really any incarceration for these folks that burned up the Wendy's. So what's going on? Yeah, you've got two different systems working simultaneously. One for the good guys, one for clearly the bad guys. The bad guys. How about some of these folks getting maybe a little reprieve down the road if we get a new president in office? Think that might happen? Some folks get some pardons done? You think? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe get some overturned convictions? I don't know. Yeah, there's going to be a whole reckoning if we get a different president in the office, right? You know what's interesting is Kamala Harris. You don't hear her name at all, do you? As somebody to run for office, run for the presidency. You're not hearing that at all. You're hearing Michael Obama. Oh, I'm sorry. I said it again. I'm sorry. Michelle Obama. You're hearing her name way more than the current vice president. That kind of tells you something. Have you been following the Hunter Biden drama about testifying in Congress, not testifying, wants to testify in a public space? What's going to happen there? I don't know. Yeah, it's some wild stuff going on out there, right? But this one here, this is outrageous. This is outrageous. What's going to happen? Nothing. Just going to be business as usual. Yeah, go ahead. Burn down that Wendy's. It's fine. $500 fine. Nice job. Well done on the matches. You really lit that bad boy up. Well done there, Junior. Go on. Now get out of here. We don't need you around here anymore. Yeah. Crazy stuff, right? Shenanigans. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.